Well, it happened again. Villanova extends Georgetown losing streak in the Big East to now a whopping 28 games. We thought it possibly could happen. We thought we could possibly see them end the streak, but we're not going to see it tonight. Villanova gets to win over Georgetown 77-73. Georgetown now sits at 5-14 overall. And unfortunately, Steve, they are still not with a win in the Big East, 0-8, 0 for 8 so far in their tries. They got about 12 more of the try this year. I don't know if they're going to get there. I don't know if we're going to see that happen. However, they sit at the bottom of the Big East. Villanova is trying to find their way back up after a tough beginning of the season with Kyle Neptune as the new coach. We're seeing some great teams here at the bottom of the Big East, some teams that we have seen in the past. Oh, have the mighty have fallen, Steve. We've seen some teams in the past that have been fantastic. Unfortunately, sitting at the bottom of the Big East, we kind of see these cycles sometimes. It's just kind of weird seeing it with Villanova because we haven't seen it in such a very long time.
Right. And I guess you could argue, hey, it's inevitable. Not every team does that. But it it breaks my heart to see a program like Georgetown become it's a joke. And good kids, talented kids. It's like watching a Roadrunner Coyote, Wile E. Coyote cartoon. You just know that eventually Georgetown's going to fall off the cliff, or something's going to backfire. It's going to punch them in the face. It's just sad. And I mean, again, I'm older than you are, so I literally remember the Big East starting, forming, and out of the Eastern Eight and all of that, and Georgetown being a presence all of that time. The telling thing for me was Tim Brando, who was doing the play-by-play. They kind of alluded to Patrick Ewing looking frustrated that his players weren't playing the type of basketball that he's trying to preach to them. And Tim Brando even said, and Patrick Ewing is hearing in his head John Thompson yelling at him like because he was such an intense coach. You got to do something. I mean, you just know that Patrick Ewing's got John Thompson's voice running around in his head all the time because he just can't. He doesn't have a solution, and it's so frustrating. I don't think it's because he's not a good X and O coach. I don't think it's that. I just don't think his players listen or apply. And then even on some of the timeouts and some of the huddles, there was always, and I'm going to point my finger to Primo Sanders a bunch in this clip here. I don't like to isolate one player, especially a college player, a player that has so much promise and potentially going to the next level. But yeah, he was just, everything was an argument. And quite honestly, he had 2 shot clock violations because he was pretending that he was on the Harlem Globetrotters and he was playing against the New Jersey Generals and he was doing all this fancy dribbling, even though the shot clock was going down under 6, under 5, dribbling. Twice he got busted for shot clock violation for dribbling too much. And then a really crucial point later in the game, again, too much dribble. He wasn't even looking up, honestly, to see where his teammates were. And then he ended up trying to force up a shot because the shot clock was winding down. It got swatted down. That is the kind of undisciplined play that has been happening in Georgetown for 2 solid seasons. And I'll even go back maybe 2.5. But that's not Georgetown basketball. I mean, it literally, makes me sad to watch a team like Georgetown struggle the way because they're a laughing stock now in the Big East, and I didn't think that would ever be possible. And I'm not a Georgetown fan. Okay, I have plenty of hatred for those Georgetown teams back during their dominant runs in the early years of the Big East, but it's just heartbreaking.
Yeah, Primo Spears, I mean, he coming over from Duquesne last year and transferred over to Georgetown. His points have got better, 15.3 points per game compared to the 12.7 last year at Duquesne. However, his turnovers have gone up an entire one. His steals are the same, his fouls are up. And there's a couple things that his game has not improved on. And when you're going to a bigger conference, you got to obviously put that into consideration. Now, obviously, you're playing against tougher opponents, but you got to meet that expectation. And I don't know if I can say that he has so far this season. I know, again, I don't want to point that out, but since we're on the conversation, obviously there's a lot of things. And as the guard, and we like to talk about guard play all the time in here. You were the leader of that on the court. You're obviously averaging 15 points a game. That's big things to do in the Big East, but there's some other things that you can work on with your game. He's not the only issue though. There's a lot of issues going on with this squad, and I know you're going to get to it. I'm not pointing at and
Yeah,
saying you're
no,
going
and
to.
again, being the big Duquesne guy and having watched him, this is why Keith Dunbrock didn't care that he was leaving. I mean, basically, he was like, "Fine, go," because it was all about him, and that's never been Georgetown basketball. They're having to bring in players that have talent, that have higher ceilings, hoping they can get the most out of them, as opposed to automatically getting the best players wanting to come to Georgetown. That's not the case anymore, and that's why this game. I know we should be talking about what happened in the game because there was a lot of back and forth and all, but it's just the fact that Georgetown has lost 28 straight in the Big East, and plus you have a Villanova team struggling in its first year under Kyle Neptune. And they have the talent, it's just not coming together. But when you think Big East, you're looking at the top of the standings for Georgetown and Villanova. You're not looking toward the bottom, and it's unsettling for me. I mean, maybe I'm being too much of a Big East fanboy here, but it's just unsettling for me to watch this game. I told you off air, I was screaming at my television set literally almost the entire game. The only time I wasn't screaming is when I got up and walked away so that I wouldn't put my foot through the screen. That's how frustrating this game was.
Yeah, Primo Spears. I mean, he did have a pretty decent game in this one. Obviously, we talk about the off or on court annex when the game was not actually going on. He had 19.7 assists. Jordan Riley also played good with 18 points, 6 rebounds, and Murray had 10 points as well. On the Villanova side, let's dig into this game and then we'll talk about Villanova. Caleb Daniels did really good, scored 16 points in this one.
Mhm.
We saw a great play from Brandon Slater, who added 15. I mean, obviously, that was what did it, in my opinion. But it was the crunch time. Villanova really played hard at the end of the game. Georgetown led by 2 with 2 minutes to go in this
Yep.
game, but after that, they didn't make another field goal the rest of the
Yep.
way. The rest of the way, they were up 71-69 with 2 minutes and 20 seconds to go. They wound up losing this game 77-73. Villanova just had enough at the end to handle this one. Georgetown had the opportunity to seal this victory, and they fell off. But what's your thoughts about this Villanova team? Obviously, we have a lot, as you mentioned. They're struggling so far under Kyle Neptune, but we kind of expected a little bit. I don't know if we expected to go this far. We thought there might be a down year in Villanova terms, but this is obviously a down year in more than Villanova terms. We're used to seeing them the top 3 all the time, not the bottom 3. I think I was expecting maybe a 5th place finish at most
Mhm.
in the Big East,
Yeah. Mhm.
not the bottom 2 or 3 like we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and they're playing hard every night. They're not taking plays off or quarters off or nights off. I mean, Villanova basketball is an aggressive style of basketball. Now, is Kyle Neptune trying to make little tweaks to the way that it's always been? Yeah, I mean, I'll give you that. But I just don't know why it hasn't translated for the Wildcats so far this season. But the fact that they don't give up is what gives me a little bit of hope that Villanova maybe can make a late run. As most Big East games are, they're one at the free throw line. Villanova at 31 attempts made 23. Georgetown only had 16. Again, it's because it's a lack of disciplined play on the court. Georgetown can't be given away opportunities like that to their opponents, especially with the way they've been playing so far. And that was it. Villanova exploited that. They exploited the fact that the Georgetown players can seem to be able to get rattled at key times. And so you made a really, really great point that Georgetown, there was a point there that I really believe, well, you know what? This nightmare is over. And I was writing as angry as I was at the game, I was actually writing a different narrative about that. And Georgetown just handed the game back over to Villanova. And credit to them, Villanova didn't give up. They didn't hang their heads when they fell behind. They just hung tough. They had 18 points off their 13 turnovers. They capitalized on everything that Georgetown handed to them. So maybe that's a good sign for Villanova going forward. Maybe they're going to start to be a little bit more consistent, but certainly you'll never accuse this Wildcat team of not playing hard every night.
Well, Villanova is now 3-5 in the conference. They're both those two of those three wins are against Georgetown. Their only other win is against St. John's. Speaking of St. John's, that's their next game that they take on for the second time. So you have to make the assumption maybe they can get their fourth win in this one. That's Friday at Fox Sports 1. We're going to see that one 7:00 Eastern time. St. John's 13-6. They played a pretty decent game season so far. Villanova, again, obviously they're struggling, but we are seeing signs of life. Obviously we saw them win before against St. John's this year. The final score in that one was back in December, and they won 78-63. They won pretty good right before Christmas time on the 21st. What do you think about Villanova's chances against St. John's again? This one actually will be on the road this time at St. John's.
Yeah, I think that St. John's is always a tough matchup for anybody. But again, because they're so aggressive, I think Villanova can force turnovers, especially at critical moments, down the stretch. And I think that could ultimately pay dividends for Villanova as far as securing a second straight win against St. John's in season. But what Villanova team's going to show up? I mean, I want what I saw today. As frustrated, and I was almost as frustrated at Villanova at times, especially during that run by Georgetown, than I was by Georgetown. But I don't know, is that consistency there? I'm hoping so. If they have another good game against St. John's, even if they lose it, even if it's but they play a tough game down to the wire. Now I'm going to start feeling better, saying, okay, Villanova is starting to feel more comfortable. They're starting to be. I think they're a very balanced team, so I think that bodes well for them later in the year. Maybe make a surprise in a tournament or whatever. But honestly, Christian, for the first time in 20 years, I don't know that I can say. Well, I think Villanova. It's just a bad stretch. They can correct it. I don't know that I can say that with confidence. I say it hopefully because a good Villanova team is good for NCAA basketball, but I don't know.
I agree. As for Georgetown, their next attempt at trying to break the streak and not go to 29 consecutive Big East losses is going to be a tough one. Saturday at noon, Fox Sports 1. They're taking on probably the hottest team in college basketball, in my opinion. That's the 15-3, number 8 ranked Xavier Musketeers. Sean Miller's got that team firing all cylinders in his return back to Xavier. Georgetown will be on the road in this one. I mean, just based off my conversation and my title to that story, Steve, I don't think Georgetown stands a chance. I would be, if I'm Fox Sports 1, I'd be making a contract and trying to get that game off the air, put a different one on, because I think that's going to be really tough for ratings.
You know what? Maybe not, though, because this losing streak is a story in itself.
That's true. That's very true.
And it's Patrick Ewing. Again, you don't want too much focus on your coach, but literally, I mean, I wonder if Patrick Ewing in the middle of the Xavier game, because of how Xavier plays, and because Sean Miller is not going to let up and not let his players, ease off the accelerator. He's going to press it and press it, press it. I wonder, do we see Patrick Ewing break down in tears in this game? Because it's because he can't do anything. When he's on the court, he could do something. On the bench, he has a sense of what he wants to do, but his players aren't executing it. And I think that is just driving him up the wall. He's not a guy that's going to walk. I keep hearing, oh, he's going to quit. Patrick Ewing's not going to walk away from this job at his alma mater, but will he be pushed out by administration, by boosters? That's a different conversation for a different night. But yeah, I don't see them. I mean, literally, if they beat Xavier the way Xavier's playing right now, that is truly the upset of the season. And I don't care what games happen after that. I don't care if a 16 seed goes to the Final Four. That would literally be the upset of the year. And that just sums up what the Georgetown season has been so far.
100%. Couldn't agree with you more on that one. So let us know your thoughts. The streak is currently at 28 with a consecutive losing streak in the Big East. Will Georgetown get to 29, 30, 31? How far do you think this streak is going to go? Let us know in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe while you're there. And thanks for watching SlasherU.